Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey everybody, it's Jared. Welcome to another episode of All Things Crime. I am coming to you from Utah, and my guest today is one of my favorite people. I follow him on every platform I possibly can. His name is Michael Yon, and if you've never heard of this gentleman, first of all, he's an absolute stud because he's an Army veteran, former Special Forces guy, and he then became a war correspondent that world renowned. And so, Michael, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Prost. Coffee this morning.
Right on. I know you're coming at us from Bangkok, so there might be a tiny bit of a delay, but it's amazing that we can actually talk all the way across the world here.
It is. I was just recently over in Okinawa and checking out the Japanese situation, and before that, Taiwan, checking that out. Of course, I'm in Thailand now, not Taiwan. And then before that, Canada, actually watching the invasion up there. And before that, Bahamas, watching that as an invasion route. And before that, down in Darien Gap, where you were at before. And the Darien Gap is just getting worse. I mean, you were out extensively in Darien Gap, and now it's more intense than it was even when you were there. And when you were there, it was obviously already full-blown invasion to the Darien Gap.
Yeah. So for those of you that may not know, I think it was the end of May 2021. So almost 3.5 years ago.
Was it that long?
Yeah. Can you believe it? Yeah, that's crazy.
We were way ahead of the curveball back then. Back then people were like, what's Darien Gap? Why is it important?
Yeah.
And now it's really obvious, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's critical right now. And it's, back then I remember the village that we went to, after that 3-hour boat ride, it was pretty amazing because we were talking about the immigration status, like 200 to 300 immigrants a day were coming through there. And I know it's got to be 10x that now.
Oh Lord. Yeah. It was only 200 or 300 a day when you were there. That's right.
Yeah.
Because that's when I was warning. I was like, no, that's going to be 10 times that or more. And now it is. It literally is. Now it fluctuates, of course, with the rains, but that's normal. See, but on the average, it's literally 10 times that now. And not only that, not only is it 10 times through that area, but many are flowing around it now. So in other words, they're still hitting our borders, but they're just not going through the Darien. Like, for instance, many of the Cubans now and the Haitians, they will go. Most of the Cubans and Haitians will skip Darien and they go land in Nicaragua, right? So they bypass that, or others flying straight from Colombia straight to the United States. By the U.S. government's doing it. I mean, people keep saying we should, do sanctions against Panama or Mexico or what. It's the most uninformed thing ever to be saying that. It's like silly. It's like thinking that Spanish is the national language of China. You know what I mean? It's just like that far out there. The United States government is doing it. Our government is the one doing it. And the United Nations is the main mechanism of it. But our government is nakedly invading our own country. Our own government is the one doing massive child trafficking. Just this morning, I got some messages. Somebody's asking for help tracking some missing child on the border. And I'm like, I don't think you understand how serious this is. This isn't about one missing child. We're talking hundreds of thousands, right? Nobody even knows how many. We've got an industrial scale invasion going on, and our government's doing it.
Yeah. The last count I heard was 300,000 lost kids. They have no idea where a lot of these kids are. And, I've done enough episodes now and interviewed enough people that, the sex trafficking and the child trafficking is just horrendous. And so I would think that the majority of those 300,000 kids are either being recycled to create, the families so they can come across the border, but I'll bet most of them are off in the sex trade somewhere, which is it just makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah, many are flown around America night and day, like from Brownsville, Texas, and all over Texas, different places. And they're flown to Florida, they're flown to Alaska, they're flown. I mean, we've covered this extensively, so this isn't anything new, but it's horrific, and it's just ongoing, and nothing is done about it. Nobody knows where these children are going. And if you broaden this out to places like Ireland, Ireland's set to be genocided. I mean, straight up, there's not one half of percent hyperbole there. Ireland is set to be genocided at the current rate, and I think that it probably will be, actually. And again, I've gone over there.
In what direction, Michael? When you say genocided, you're saying the Irish people or the other way around?
Irish people. Oh yeah, clearly. I just finished last night reading a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's interesting. It's a very, very interesting book. I highly recommend it. And if you actually want to understand a lot of what's going on in places like Ireland and the United States, read The Creature from Jekyll Island. I mean, it's mostly about the Fed and the huge criminality that goes on there. But in reality, it covers all the invasions. It covers the pandemics. It covers the idea of using space aliens to frighten people into a world government. Basically, it's about world government, right? It's about totalitarianism and enslaving, especially the United States. Once you've enslaved the United States, then the rest are, easy. That it's easy to bring the rest along by the nose. And the United States is a long way down that path already. For instance, we have no borders. Meanwhile, we've got Americans talking about, let's go save Israel. Let's go save Ukraine. We have no border. We don't have a border crisis because we have no border, and it's not a crisis. It's a war, right? This is a straight up war. This is an existential war. And again, there's people that'll say that this is conspiracy theory or whatever. I'm done with them. I have no time for them. They're not serious people. This is a state of war. My mind changes when I go to wars. You'll see a different part of me gets activated where I have zero time for clowns. Right here in Bangkok, 2 years ago there were no marijuana stores. Now there's like within 15 minutes walk of me, there's probably 20, 25 dope stores. Like there's one like a couple 100 meters from me, 100 meters away. You can walk in and just buy all the dope you want. You know what I mean? I mean, now, again, there's people that go, oh, it's about my freedom, man. It's about medicinal marijuana. Again, I have no time for clowns. This is not what this is about. They don't understand what's going on. Our societies are being dumbed down, drugged up, brainwashed, so that we can just be easy in the saddle, as one attorney once said years ago, Jerry Spence, easy in the saddle, train the horse, and the next thing you know, you're just pulling the plow, and that's what's happening right now. So I see countries around the world, like when you were in Panama, there was the IOM there that's running. They're the ones that are running the main part of the invasion, the International Organization for Migration. There's another regional headquarters, by the way, in Manila in the Philippines. So what you're seeing there in Panama, in the Ciudad de Ceberá, the city of knowledge in Panama City, former Fort Clayton, that's the regional headquarters for the invasions of all of Central America and Mexico as well. Mexicans think that they're just a pass-through country. I keep telling Mexicans and my Mexican friends, you will be killed. You will die. This is not about let's go get America. Let's go get Canada. They're going to get you too. For sure, all those little gangsters that you got there, they are nothing when they hit you with biological warfare. Now, I know the big cartels are very powerful against normal people and that sort of thing. But when you go up against Chinese Communist Party and other players like this that you can't really reach, but they can reach you, they're going to kill you. They're going to kill you in mass numbers, poison your water, poison your air, poison your food, put you into famine. That's what's happening. When I went up to Canada recently, went to Toronto, went to Vancouver, went to Yellowknife, which is up by the Arctic Circle. I hadn't been to Yellowknife since since I was in the Army, actually, many years ago. And but Yellowknife is, it's like, bear country. You know what I'm saying? I mean, literally, there's like people drying bears on the corners of their houses and that sort of thing, bear skins. But but the bottom line is, up in Yellowknife, 250 miles from the Arctic Circle, all the taxi drivers I had for more than about 10 days were all from like Nigeria, Somalia, Pakistan, Afghanistan. This is the Arctic, almost at the Arctic Circle, 250 miles away, right? And so this is why. Why are there so many migrants, quote unquote, there? And then you go down south, like you go to Vancouver, you go to Toronto, massive numbers of South Indians, massive numbers of Chinese just taking over. Canadians have already lost. That's done. Canada's done. It's cooked, just like Ireland, right? But why? Because this is a divide and conquer strategy. You're bringing in all these different people that will fight and each other. And so, this is a perfect setup for taking the resources, enslaving people. It's happening right now. There's many different oligarchical systems that are fighting, by the way. It's not like there's just one group. It's not like it's just the World Economic Forum and that sort of thing. There's also the Chinese Communist Party. There's the South Indians. There's all kinds of different oligarchical structures that are simultaneously destroying us because the West has become so weak with their little dope all over the place. I go back to the United States and I smell dope all over the place. Every time I bring it up, people get upset. Oh, it's about my freedom, man. What about alcohol? Okay, alcohol too, right? Same thing. What I'm saying is I spend most of my time overseas in other countries. And when I go back to the United States, I go all over the United States, coast to coast, Key West to Washington State to Maine. I'm all over the place, right? I'm out with farmers. Right. I'm out with lawmakers, law enforcement. I've been across the entire southern border from the Gulf to San Diego. I've seen it. I've seen the United States. More than 99% of Americans who spend all their time there, I've seen more of it than 99%. I know what's going on. My country's doped up. United States is doped up. I come back, I can see it. It's pharmaceuticals that they're taking prescription drugs that are altering their attitudes, their moods, their susceptibility to brainwashing. Dope that they sell in stores all over the place. Now I smell it everywhere I go. Elevators, hotels, and now it's here in Bangkok. And it only started 2 years ago. There's dope stores all over the place here now. This is part of the actual war, is to soma, dope you up, and call, the old term soma. That's what it is, right? Sleep to dope you up, isolate you down. And because the average person actually wants to be a slave, believe it or not. And they will provide that here. Take your soma, be my slave. And so that's why this invasion's going on, because Americans aren't standing up to it. Irish are not standing up. There are a few all across Europe not standing up. So now the genocides have already begun. They've already begun. You see people getting stabbed constantly, raped constantly. This is not going to be normal crime. These are going to be straight up mass murder and genocide.
Yeah. Well, I was actually watching the interview you did with Jordan Peterson, and one of the interesting things that you said was, let me quote it here. It said, "Professionals talk about conditions and amateurs talk about sparks."
Yeah.
And one of the sparks that I saw was it's causing a lot of those riots over in the UK, and it just crushes me that all these beautiful countries that they've allowed such mass migration that there's no chance that these people will be assimilating into the culture, and so they're basically just replacing the culture. But that spark that you were talking about, based on the conditions of what is happening, was that migrant walked in and stabbed a whole bunch of little kids and killed like 3 of them. And that just kind of sparked everything. And now there's all these.
The sparks are irrelevant. The sparks are completely irrelevant. It's
the
about
sparks
conditions.
are easy.
Yeah.
Those are easy.
The sparks are always there. They're always there. It's about conditions, right? It's about the dry forest. There's always sparks. There's lightning. There's kids with bottle rockets. There's somebody flicking a cigarette out. There's always sparks. But, you were in the Darien Gap. You could have a 747 crash filled with fuel in the Darien Gap, and it will not burn down the Darien Gap. It's a rainforest. It'll be a smoking crater for a while, and then the flames will go out. But, one little spark in California where they don't clear the underbrush for a generation, and, and it's, there's been drought and that sort of thing, and towns burn down. So it's not about the sparks. It's about the conditions, and the conditions have been intentionally set. Many of the people setting these conditions, like these, Texas billionaires and whatnot, who are helping to set these conditions, they are actually committing suicide for the things that they want to have in the future. They're selling out short term. You might think of a lot of these, super wealthy people as being so much smarter, but, I'm around some of them, for extended periods sometimes. I'm like, a lot of these guys aren't any smarter than the average person. A lot of them kind of came into that wealth, right? They're not the ones who actually made it, right? And they're fools. They're actually literally helping set conditions for their own destruction, right?
Yeah.
Then there's others who are actually quite sophisticated. If you read the book, again, The Creature from Jekyll Island, I just finished reading it last night. Actually, and just before that, I read that Ron Paul book on, getting rid of the Fed, right? But if you read the Creature from Jekyll Island, you'll see how the very sophisticated people operate. Because there is another class of people that are incredibly wealthy, and they are actually highly sophisticated. And there's this idea, I was talking with Masako Ganaha about this just yesterday. This idea, people say, I remember when the media was honest. I remember when journalists were honest. No, you don't. No, you don't. You just don't. If you're alive right now and you're watching this, I don't care if you're 90 years old watching this, you don't remember when media was honest. You remember when you thought they were honest, but I can assure you they were being bought in bulk in the 1800s. They were being bought in bulk in more than 100 years ago, 130 years ago. They were buying journalists. They were buying newspapers. The globalists, they were buying editors by the dozen, right? You don't remember it. It never happened. What you remember is when you didn't realize it. And now you realize it's completely corrupted. You realize that now, but you didn't realize it then because they were better at it. And also, we didn't have these channels like you and I have now to talk about it. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have our own private channels, but now we do. And they want to look what just happened to the Telegram guy. He just got arrested in France. They want to shut down any of our freedom to communicate. And because, the cat's getting out of the bag.
Yeah. Well, you have former military officers threatening Elon Musk that he's going to get arrested next.
Who's threatened Elon Musk now?
Oh, it was that Vindman guy, the Colonel Vindman.
That guy's total trash. He's a
I know he's a
Ukrainian,
garbage, but
operator.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just saying that's coming from some guy like that, threatening Elon Musk. I was just like, you know what? It's so blatant nowadays, and it's so out in the open that they don't even pretend to, or even try to hide it anymore.
They don't even hide it. And a lot, keep in mind, and this is true. I noticed this when I was in India. When I was in India years ago, you can never go wrong with studying mathematics or studying cults. You know what I mean? Every minute you study mathematics or cults is a minute invested, right? And so I was in India and I was studying cults, right? And I actually first got on that idea when I was in the Army, when I was in Special Forces, and some of the older soldiers who would be like 40, they would say, you need to study world religions and cults. I'm like, cults, I'm a Green Beret. Why would I be studying cults? But then over time, it becomes actually quite apparent. You realize the only cult people never see is the cult that they're in. And we are surrounded by cults, and people that are very sophisticated can make cults almost instantly, right? They can create cults out of thin air, seemingly. There's an art and a science to it, but
go into that a little bit, Michael, about, I kind of want to backtrack just a little bit here. We've covered, an amazing amount of ground here, but I got to make sure that we keep the listener and the watcher, the viewer, included in our conversation here, because we have a lot of context that they may not. And
right.
So, a lot of this, like our relationship, for example, started, again, almost 3.5 years ago when we took those two congressmen down to the Darien Gap. And the whole reason that we did was because as soon as President Biden took office, he began opening up the southern border.
Yep.
And he was also encouraging all of this immigration. Well, initially, I think we were all kind of looking at it, including the congressman but pretty much anybody on the conservative side. I think we were looking at what Biden was doing as kind of almost like an isolated area. We're kind of pigeonholing, what he was doing as part of, for example, the consensus. They wanted to bring in voters. They wanted to bring in
Not me.
people that were
Not me.
That were going to affect
Straight
that.
up.
No, I
Not me.
understand.
If you look
I
at my old
understand.
interviews, I'm like, this is not about voters. People kept saying that. I'm like, no, this is about replacement. That's like,
Right.
Voters is only one little tiny sliver of this. This is about something much bigger than voters.
Right. Well, and that's why I wanted to include that, is because yes, when we were going down there, that was our mindset. But between you and Chuck and everybody else that helped us get down there and actually see what was going on. Well, first of all, I mean, bringing people through or encouraging people to come through the Darien Gap and make that trek, to me is just immoral just in itself, because of the human tragedy and the hardship. And then you start talking about kids, and then it just magnifies that by 100x. Well, but that's just one small part of it. And one of the primary reasons that I really wanted to talk to you, I mean, this is a crime show. I mean, we talk about, what constitutes and what kind of the conditions for crime are. But I think this is one of the largest crimes in the history of man, because literally, like what you said, what is happening is we are being replaced. And it's I think the entire Western culture, whether you're in Europe or Australia or here in the Northern Hemisphere, this entire culture is being replaced. And the only way that can happen is one, it has to be replaced physically with people, but it also has to be replaced with, how we live and what we believe and everything that has kind of started the country. Well, what are the conditions? And here's where I want you to go with this. What are the conditions that have to occur in order for a massive country like ours to be, replaced? Because you can't just physically do it just with people. I mean, over the past 3-4 years, we've let in, let's say, the official number is around 10 million, but it's probably double that at least. Well, that's great, but 20 million can't replace 337 million instantly. The conditions for being replaced have to start happening. Not only just the physical immigrants, but other conditions. And so what are those?
Yeah, right. It may sound like I'm talking about disparate things, drugs and cults. I'm not. I'm going somewhere with this. You have to let me develop it, right?
Right.
Cults, right? It's brainwashing, right? You have to understand the average American, not just Americans, but Europeans as well. I lived in Europe for more than 6 years, by the way. I'm quite familiar with the terrain. I spreche Deutsch. I speak German. I've been all over Europe, right? And I go back on a regular basis, right? So I've been all over the place there. I've seen it, right? They're just as easy. They might think that they're high above all this, but they're not. Brainwashing, right? Why do we have no border? We have no border because people are like, oh, I don't want to be called a racist. This is conditioning, brainwashing, cult making, that sort of thing. People that in the various cults, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, all these idiotic cults, but they are little robots, meat robots. You see, Trudeau up in Canada, or the people in the many different, there's so many cults out there. It's unbelievable. Right. And they are made quite easily. Now, one of the ways that you want to get people into the mood to be culted up is drugs. That's why I keep talking about drugs. And the dopers will be like, it's about medicinal freedom. No, it's not. It's about making you stupid to talk about medicinal and making and talking about your freedom, laying on your couch while we have no border. That's why when I was on with Alex Jones and he's asking me if I wanted to go on with Joe Rogan. They're good friends. And I said it right on live. No, I don't want to go on Joe Rogan. I'm not going on Mr. Dope Joke. I'm probably the only person in the world who's openly turned down the opportunity to go on Joe Rogan. I'm not and I know it makes people upset, especially the dopers who think that they're so smart. Like, hey, you missed going on that big audience. It's like, yeah, believe it or not, I can do that math, but the dopers don't actually believe that you can do that math. But the bottom line is, why did I not go on? Why did I even turn down any opportunity? I'm not bringing anything that will help Americans, justify getting drunk and high with Joe Rogan live on his show, literally getting drunk and high while we have no border. And what does he do? Whoosh, whoa. And they'll say, well, he's got the best, whoosh. He always does whoosh, like he's high on drugs or mushrooms or something. He is part of the brainwashing operation. He's a nothing. He's a zero, right? He's big to little people, but on the big scale of the kind of people, the globalists who are doing this, he's a cigarette butt. Same with Trudeau. Trudeau is nothing but a condom for globalists. He's not the prime minister. He's a meat puppet. Harris, meat puppet. Trump is a meat puppet. Trump is a nothing compared to the people we're dealing with. Now, the people that are in his group, I know, I'll never read you again, Michael. Yeah, I don't trust you. You've jumped the shark. Whatever, man. I'm telling you what's the truth. Look at my track record on the wars. Look at my predictions on the wars. Look at my predictions on Nordstream. When you and I went to the Darien Gap, Jared, Nordstream had not been destroyed yet, right? But I took Masako Ganaha to Ludwigshafen, Germany twice to BASF plant. This is all part of what I'm talking about. This is all part of the larger picture. These aren't random roads I'm going down. These all come together. We know that the globalists, what they're doing is deindustrializing Europe. They're deindustrializing the United States. They're making slaves out of people, social security number, birth certificates. This is all about slavery, right? This is all about economic slavery, the Fed, economic slavery, right? This is all part of the larger picture. They're going to put us into food crisis. I've been warning about this since January and February of 2020. We're going to end up in global famines. So anyway, Masako and I went to Germany, Ludwigshafen, Germany. In 1914, that's when they started the Haber-Bosch process in Ludwigshafen, Germany, creating nitrogenous fertilizers and explosives from natural gas. You take the hydrogen off the natural gas, combine it with the nitrogen that we're breathing, and make ammonia. Make nitrogenous fertilizers like ammonium sulfate, ammonium nitrate, which they need desperately here in Thailand because this is a huge rice producer, and rice is basically a vacuum for nitrogen out of the soil. And they only create about 8% of their nitrogenous fertilizers. The rest of it's imported, right? Not to go into Thailand, but there's a reason why I'm here, and it ain't vacation, right? So the bottom line is Ludwigshafen. We went there in August 1st, 2022, and went there on September 12th, 2022, right? Warning that I thought Nordstream was going to be interrupted. Warning in advance that I thought Nordstream may be destroyed or turned off. Last time I was at Ludwigshafen at BASF, huge producer of nitrogenous fertilizers. The German economy is dependent on BASF. It's incredibly important. I was there on September 12th with Masako. About 12 days later, 14 days later, Nordstream was destroyed. Was September 26th, right? 2022. Boom. How did I know that? Because I know what they're doing. I watch what they're doing. I study them. I know what their intent is. They say it. They signal it. Then in April of 2023, I was up at Groningen in northern Netherlands. That is the largest gas field in Europe. And I was saying, I think they're going to close Groningen gas field. And people are like, they're never going to close Groningen. And I was like, remember when I said, I think they're going to destroy or interrupt Nord Stream? And they did, right? You know what I'm saying? To target BASF and the nitrogenous fertilizer supply chain and other supply chains. And they did. Well, now they've done it to Groningen. Groningen is closed now, right? So these things, I have a long list of things that I've been successfully and publicly predicting, publicly, in writing, in interviews like this, like the Screwworms in Panama that I told you about when you were there. The Screwworms, remember that facility that where we irradiate flies to stop these flesh-eating worms from getting to the United States. The Darien Gap is the front line in this battle. So way back when you were in Darien, I was warning about screwworms, and now they're back. And people are like, Screwworms, where do you come up with this stuff? I'm just like, put it on your calendar. Multi-drug resistance, tuberculosis, typhus, screwworms. And now look, it's all here, right? It was highly predictable if you study like Rain Man 7 days a week, which I do. And you will accept the answers that you actually get. You don't try to rationalize them away. What's happening now as we eventually go into these global famines, they are coming, that will create HOP, human osmotic pressure, that will clear people, that will push and pull people through the Darien Gap. That's why I keep going to the Darien Gap. That's where I found that road down there last year, right, that they're building, because I kept checking. I know they're going to connect Colombia at some point. Now they're doing it, right? That will be an invasion road from Colombia into Panama straight. You can dump out all of South America down that road. I think the time will come when you're going to see Colombia, especially, they're keeping quiet right now. I haven't seen anybody predict this in writing or in any interviews. This is just coming from me. Take it for what it's worth. I would put your money on it. I'm getting good at this over the years. I think Colombia, after that road is built, will eventually start to make claims on Panama. Because for us to open the Panama Canal, which we opened in 1914, the same year that Ludwigshafen, BASF at Ludwigshafen started with nitrogenous fertilizers, that happened to be the same year Panama Canal was open. But in order for us to finish the Panama Canal, we sponsored a breakaway country called Panama from Colombia. That used to be Colombia, right? So we helped Panama break off so that we could actually build the canal, right? Now, when the Colombian tried to send their Navy up, we sent the U.S. Navy and blocked them. So Colombia has been sore ever since. They don't talk much about it, but China is working closely down with Colombia and closely with Ecuador. They just muscled them hard about 3.5 months ago, but China did anyway. But the bottom line is I think Colombia is going to make a claim on Panama after they've got that road open, and then they're going to probably try to salami slice Panama down in the Darien where you were at, and eventually China will use, this is what I think is going to unfold. China will eventually, they'll use Colombia as their mechanism for taking the Panama Canal, and then China will have it. And the Panama Canal is this artery for us, right? Just like Nordstream is this artery for BASF. And when you look at Groningen gas field in Europe, that's big, right? And you see, by the way, where Groningen is, you look where Netherlands is, that's where the globalists are developing tri-state city, which is all part of this larger thing that I'm talking about. The invasion through the Darien Gap, the invasion coming from the Canadian border, the invasion coming through Bahamas, all these, most Americans don't even realize there's a big Chinese port right off the Florida coast. We were just there this year. And this, we are being surrounded. Chinese are, they built a huge library in San Salvador. Masako and I went down there and went into it. They got a Chinese communist flag flying downtown in San Salvador, El Salvador. They are taking the squares on the chessboard all around us, right? So what I'm getting to is this is not random stuff. This is not about voters. They don't care about voters.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.